Been trying real hard to stick with the messaging. Not a border crisis, just a little challenge, just a problem. It is the worst thing that has ever happened at the border, potentially, the southern border, and the Biden administration made it happen. They made it happen. Let's look at these numbers. They are incredible. Under Donald Trump, unaccompanied minors in custody, 2,600. Biden today, 3,200. This is what they campaigned on, that Donald Trump was this monster and he caused all this. No, he did everything he could to prevent it, to minimize harm to children at the border. All right, but they chose their monster. It was Donald Trump, not Joe Biden. He was the hero. This is happening on his watch. But a quick reminder about how they have portrayed this, well, since January of 2017, since when Donald Trump became president.
The U.S. government is announcing and pursuing this policy of literally taking babies away from their mothers.
The one thing that the president has not talked about is the fact that he has systematically engaged in the violation of international human rights on our border.
Frankly, the cruelty is part of their policy.
This is cruel. These are human rights abuses. Yeah. This is wrong.
But that's it. While Trump and his team were putting together this cruel and inhumane policy, they had no forethought into the negative externalities, the trauma it would inflict on families.
Now the situation is kind of like what they're talking about. Finally, the reality has met their rhetoric. Back then, they had it totally wrong. Again, look at these numbers. Right now, there is a crisis. Big time. How are the mainstream media playing it at this point? Well, let me tell you, business as usual. No big deal, just a small problem. They're adopting the Biden administration talking points. This was on the nightly news last night over on NBC. Deep in the show, just a story to fill time.
Jacob Soboroff has the latest.
Tonight, a growing problem at the border. Two administration officials tell NBC News over 3,200 unaccompanied migrant children are being detained in Border Patrol facilities not designed for kids. Nearly half are being held over the 72 hours allowed by law. That number exploding from nearly zero last month. Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas recently told us they need more space after President Biden reversed Trump policy that had kept unaccompanied children out because of COVID.
We are building the capacity that we need to in order to address the needs of the children.
A growing problem at the border. His first words, a growing problem. That's it. Not a crisis, not an atrocity. How did they wrap up that report last night?
DHS and the UN project a record number of arrivals here at the border in 2021. That's on top of the challenges the Biden administration is already facing here at the border tonight.
Okay, challenges, talking about the problem getting worse than ever before, but something rather clinical about this. So his name is Jacob Soboroff, and I've kept my eye on him for a while. He wrote a book during the Trump years, and let's put it up on the screen, Separated, Inside an American Tragedy. I'll read you the first line from the book. I am an unlikely witness to one of the most shameful chapters in modern American history, the Trump administration's deliberate and systematic separation of thousands of migrant children from their parents was, according to humanitarian groups and child welfare experts, an unparalleled abuse of the human rights of children. Hyperbole, over the top, totally unfair. The Trump administration was seeking to minimize the risk to children. And now that his darkest dreams have come true, it's all kind of in a day's work. You notice the dramatic shift in tone. This is not a humanitarian crisis, a shameful episode. This is a problem at the border. They're always doing it, aren't they? Spinning for Democrats. You know, at one point, the border was not a political issue. It wasn't partisan. I mean, actually, Democrats and Republicans agreed you had to have some sort of border protection.
The bill before us will certainly do some good. It will authorize some badly needed funding for better fences and better security along our borders.
Secure our borders with technology, personnel, physical barriers if necessary.
Construction of a 630-mile border fence create a significant barrier to illegal immigration on our southern land border.
They were all so young and reasonable and normal and even smart. They lost their way, didn't they? Now we have a full-fledged humanitarian crisis raging at the border, and it's getting worse. It's getting worse. And we've got left-leaning media that's covering for them on this and just about everything else. I'm about to show you what I think is smoking gun proof of their horrific left-leaning bias. This is, again, on the NBC Nightly News last night. You know that pipe bombs were planted the night before the riots on January 6th? They were. Look at how lead anchorman Lester Holt presents that news. This is the headline, the very opening of the show, the headline portion.
New surveillance of the person who placed pipe bombs before the Capitol riot, walking with a backpack, the moment the suspect may have left a bomb in a park near Democratic headquarters. Tonight, the manhunt and the plea from the FBI.
Did you hear that? He left it at Democratic headquarters. Probably one of those crazy MAGA people, right? He left it at Democratic headquarters. That's the headline. That's the top of the show. But what did the FBI say? The reporter, 20 minutes later, tells us the real story.
The FBI is hoping someone who sees this video will notice something that looks familiar in the mannerisms or movements. Investigators believe this is who planted 2 pipe bombs a few blocks apart near the Capitol, outside the Republican and Democratic National Party offices the night before the riot.
The Republican and the Democratic Party offices? Why wasn't that in the headline? Democrat was. Why? Because it agrees with their narrative that the violence on January 6th was all Trump folks, MAGA people. Pretty glaring, right? In my opinion, yeah, it is. The important part, got to catch this guy. Let's take another look at him, shall we? This is from the FBI. And I'll say this about the FBI. In their video, they clearly stated it was RNC and DNC where these bombs were planted. Let's take it full. He had a unique Nike sneaker, I'm told. They got to be really good to catch this guy because you can't see much. A hoodie, and that's about it. But so there it is. Remember, he planted pipe bombs at the Republican headquarters and Democratic headquarters. All right. Well, we got to do this. Yes, it's not over. And there's actually some value in talking about this. Harry and Meghan. Kind of a ridiculous story, kind of sad, by the way. By my count, Meghan has screwed up 2 families, one in the UK, one here in North America. We all saw the interview, did we? Yeah, about 10% of the country did at this point. This is the highlight, or the low light, this moment.
Meghan shared with us that there was a conversation with you about Archie's skin tone. Mm-hmm. What was that conversation?
That conversation I'm never going to share. But at the time it was awkward. I was a bit shocked.
Can you tell us what the question was?
No, I'm not comfortable sharing that.
Okay.
And he said he's never going to share it, never. At the rate they're going, I think we're going to find out by next Tuesday who the person was. Look, who knows what's going on inside a family when you're on the outside. That conversation happened before they were married. Whatever unpleasantness there was, by the big day, did you see Charles? He walked her down the aisle. Even I thought it was beautiful. What a moment, huh? I mean, the Prince and Meghan, because she had a fight with her dad, Mr. Markle. He couldn't come. That was sad. Piers Morgan has been very, very critical of Meghan Markle and very, very supportive of the royal family. And if you're a British citizen, I think that's the right way to be. He got into a fight with his colleagues at work, so he quit. And you know what? I admire that.
I believe in freedom of speech. I believe in the right to be allowed to have an opinion. If people want to believe Meghan Markle, that's entirely their right. I don't believe almost anything that comes out of her mouth. And I think the damage she's done to the British monarchy and to the Queen at a time when Prince Philip is lying in hospital is enormous. And frankly contemptible. So if I have to fall on my sword for expressing an honestly held opinion about Meghan Markle and that diatribe of bilge that she came out with in that interview, so be it.
A diatribe of bilge. I love it. The Brits have such a way with words. Good for Piers Morgan. That Meghan Markle, very sad. Again, she screwed up now 2 families. Now I can see why Donald Trump had respect for Piers Morgan. You know, Piers did very well on The Celebrity Apprentice, and these guys were friends, at least at one point, and that makes sense to me. All right, I was pretty hard on the left-leaning media. I am pretty much every night, but I want to say something nice about Roger Mudd, the late, great Roger Mudd. Broadcast journalist, died yesterday at the age of 93. He was with CBS for a long time, NBC, I think the History Channel. I always liked him, and I think political reporters today down in the Beltway can still learn something from this guy, because he didn't pretend that he had all the answers when he was talking to important people. He was genuinely curious. And sometimes a simple question can bring about the most fascinating answer. This was a famous moment that may have doomed Ted Kennedy. Roger Mudd asked him a very simple question. This is back in 1979. Teddy Kennedy, 10 years after Chappaquiddick, still thought he could be president. Very simple question from Roger Mudd. Listen to that, and then the weird answer.
Why do you want to be president?
Well, were I to make the announcement and to run, the reasons that I would run is because I have a great belief in this country that there's more natural resources than any nation of the world. As the greatest educated population in the world, the greatest technology of any country in the world, the greatest capacity for innovation in the world, and the greatest political system in the world. And yet I see at the current time that most of the industrial nations of the world are exceeding us in terms of productivity, are doing better than us in terms of meeting the problems of inflation, that they're dealing with their problems
That's enough.
of
That's
energy
good. That's,
and their problems of
we get the
unemployment.
idea. It was a meandering answer that made pretty much no sense. It actually sounds a little bit better than I remembered, but that doomed his candidacy back in 1979. He was running, or wanted to run. He did run against Jimmy Carter, the incumbent president, and lost big time, but got to the convention.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news channel, now in more than 70 million homes. You can get Newsmax TV on your cable system or check your cable guide. And if your system doesn't carry Newsmax, call them, tell them you want Newsmax TV, because we're real news for real people.